already have our key panelists joining in today for the wonderful topic that is coming up, that is Industry Insight session. So the topic is Zero Trust Security Framework, Enhancing Cybersecurity in the Digital Age. We have our first speaker joining in, Ali Ragab, founder and CTO with SecDelta. Can we have a big round of applause and have him on the stage? Our second speaker, Deblohit Bose. He's a manager, cybersecurity, center of excellence from Avanade. So can we have a big round of applause and have him on the stage? Our third eminent speaker, Abhilash Radhadevi. He's a head of cybersecurity, OQ Trading. So can we have a big round of applause and have him on the stage? Our fourth speaker, Gokul Vasudev, Information Security Consultant, CIO Advisory from Dubai Health Authority. Can we have a big round of applause and have him on the stage? And our moderator of the session, Sanjeev Kumar Kothari, Associate Director, AI and Analytics Consulting from Cognizant. Can we have a big round of applause and have him on the stage? So over to you, Sanjeev.
Hi, am I audible first of all? Yeah, thanks. I can't, match up with Khagun, as a moderator, but I'll try my level best to do the moderation job. Just come to me at the very last minute, yeah. But I think we are very lucky to have the cybersecurity experts. It's a great panel to moderate, so I'm feeling humble about it, to be honest. So, if I open the floor for everyone, to be honest, by asking a generic question, right, and then I'll go to the individual questions probably, yeah. So, what's the biggest challenge business face today in adopting a zero trust framework? And how should business owners or maybe CIO, CTO respond and work to mitigate these challenges effectively? Maybe, I'm open if you want to start with, yeah.
I think, there are multiple challenges here. It's just that if you look at it from the outside, you'll basically look at certain things such as, for example, I would say, most prominently, you will still have legacy systems in your environment. That becomes a major challenge in most of the cases. And an even bigger challenge is usually the cultural aspect of security. No matter whatever technology you bring in, if the humans are not trained or they don't have the right culture, you won't be able to control the effects of it. And so these two becomes the prominent ones. But I would usually try to speak about something non-conventional, but is an important aspect as well. I usually look at data governance as one of the most important ones. What's happening is that right now, if you look at it, there are thousands and thousands of solutions surrounding cybersecurity from all these different aspects. When you talk about zero trust itself, you will find so many solutions. So you're basically going after the solution, but you do not look at the basic thing. What is the most important foundation for all of this? Unless you have a proper data governance, along with the zero trust architecture, this is not going to work really well for you, because I think that's the most important one that I would like to say. That is the biggest challenge, because we were already talking about where exactly your data is residing. We don't know where it is, because it's basically everywhere, on a SaaS system, on the cloud somewhere, on some of the other systems as well, on premises, different locations, and multiple data centers. How do you know what exactly your data is? I think, data governance is the base of all of this, because, that's our most important digital asset, the money of today. Data is the money.
Yeah. So, three things, three pillars, even before talking about technology, is people, process, and then technology. The important thing which I have actually heard from many of the CISOs and everything is that I know all the technologies, I can read it. Tell me something from your experience as a managed service provider or an SI, that how do I, mitigate that fear of change? Because as, it was being spoken right by Abhilash, that first is that you have a migration journey from legacy to the new. It's not that every old company from mid-size to the enterprise will have everything from scratch. They're not always cloud native. They're on the journey. They're still on the journey to the cloud. So that hybrid approach, how do you mitigate that zero trust approach in a hybrid approach? And few things is true that some of the legacy system doesn't work with the new ZTNA, when we say zero trust network architecture, or they do not work with the authentication mechanism that is right now. Okay, some things, if people have heard about that, the Kerberos or the LDAP mechanisms, they do not have a OAuth 2 or or a kind of API tokenization methodology. So I'm not going to that jargons and everything, but you have to understand how to first have a transition of that technology. Before that is again the people, because zero trust is not a plug-and-play solution, right? For a CISO, it's more about maturing the people on the identity, the user identity. I always go with these 5 things when I talk about technology. UNNDA, user, network, devices, data, and then application. So if you see, these are the 5 pillars. So where you have user, there you have the data, then you have the devices, then you have the network, and then you come to the application. And that exactly follows the the entire packaging layer or whatever you can talk about. So that's the journey, and obviously process, because in zero trust the way you do an identity is not unanimous in a group companies. When you talk about group companies who are having multiple branches, the way the identity is strict in a infrastructure or let's say in a manufacturing floor where they have machines and everything is not the same in the finance floor maybe, because they have a different way. So that umbrella of how you actually put a unanimous approach is a struggle. So that comes with the people and process. And then in the technology, you cannot do a plug and play. It's the migration that you have to look, that where you have the comfortability of migration and what are the main pain points. So I think I'll talk about that later, but that's the main aspect of pain which the CIOs or the C-level people have, and this is what I actually suggest to start an approach with.
So the CIOs and CTOs should put in front of their eyes the reputation of the company and the data which could be breached from inside the company itself, not even the hacker outside of it, to hack maybe API or web application and reach to the database and so on. So zero trust makes the mitigation plan for mitigating, breaching any kind of sensitive data from inside. So the first process that they should do, and they should force their organization strategically to set the data classification. So they classify the data and to know the sensitivity of the data, and then try to build the zero trust strategy to protect the data and protect the way getting into the data, right? The network address, network access, and so on. Setting the strategic plan for this kind of zero trust, and always verify everything, verifying all entities. And entities here means user and his device as well, right? If the user has access to a specific resource, but his device is not secured, then he shouldn't get any access to this, and so on. So this is just high level about it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So in any information security aspect, so we always say about CIA triad, like the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So if a CISO or if the CIO understand this, so to mitigate this issue, just use common sense. That's the basic concept of it. Now, as a zero trust, this is a new buzzword. Okay, now recently for the past 5 years, we are just talking about zero trust, but we have been doing this all these years. So 10 years or 20 years back, you would have had a Takak server, AAA authentication, and Radius servers to authenticate. So this was there. So we had a NAC those days as well. So we were actually controlling it. So now everything together, they are putting it together and just trying to sell it as a new word, and that's a marketing gimmick. Basically, I would take it in that angle. But finally, it was there all these years, and it will continue to be here.
Great, yeah. Gokul, you mentioned about CIA. I mean, yeah. So I like that because I recently finished a banking client project actually, and I'm not a security person actually. And the project was all about cybersecurity, which was all DORA regulation within banking and financial services sector. And they wanted me to help them on data resiliency side of it. And that's where I learned about, okay, CIA is so important, confidentiality, integrity. Well done, thank you. And I heard a lot about zero trust from all of you. But I think there is a confusion between zero trust and zero trust network architecture as such. So if you can help us, maybe Gokul, if you can help us to clarify between these two, that would be really great.
Yeah, so basically zero trust is a method or it's a methodology, it's a theory, it's basically a concept what we all think. So it's just don't trust anything, just verify everything before we give access. So it's everywhere, right? So even if you want to enter the hotel, so you need to show your badge, otherwise you will not be. And this is there across the industries, across platforms, not only on the security. So that is what zero trust is. Whereas we use various tools, like as I said, network access control, for example. So you may be using endpoint detection response, SOAR capabilities, SIEM for monitoring, SOC for the monitoring aspects and mitigate the aspects of it. So these are the tools. When it comes to the tools, then we make tools and with a segmentation, possibly a micro segmentation with different networking devices or applications data on different VLANs and so on. So that's how you make the architecture. So in different organizations, there is no fixed architecture saying that I cannot go and say I need a zero trust architecture, so I cannot get it. So it is based on our networks, how our organization needs it, demands it. So we design that and then go ahead with it.
So, I mean, if I have to summarize that as a layman, right? So what you said, zero trust is kind of what we need to do, and your network architecture is how you want to do that, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, thank you. A very well explanation. Now, if I go to Ali now, right? So when it comes to zero trust approach, right? So what are the advantages you can see in that? And how does it reduce the attack surface in today's complex security landscape? If you can help us to answer that.
Sure. This is really good question. So as a start of the process to mitigate the data breach and so on and apply the zero trust security, data classification is extremely important to start with. So we know the sensitive of information we store in the, for example, database or something like this. And then we segment or implement the micro segmentation of the network. And this means that you divide the network, which is the root to the database, which hosts the sensitive information, into isolated layers. So the layer going to the sensitive data should be having security controls other than the other way, which does not route to non-sensitive information, right? And then once we know the sensitive information and microsegment the network itself, then let's apply the least privilege giving to the users who are privileged to access this kind of data, right? So the old way, we had the VPN, correct? And the VPN, you just allow VPN for a specific user and he gets access for everything without any problem, yeah? So least privilege, you allow the user to access specific resource in a specific network path, yeah? And apply the multi-factor authentication as well. So this is another layer of security. And as we said, we also need to authenticate his device as well. So this will lead to endpoint security, to measure the security configurations and the user behavior in his device as well. And based on that, you give the decision to whether to allow access or no. And all of these are automated way, not any manual intervention at all. And at the end of the process of applying zero trust security is the observability. So you should have all the insights about the specific user who is doing what and when. And that's it.
Perfect, yeah. I think after hearing from all of you, it looks like AI is here for long because we are into the safe hands. Okay, so I go to maybe Deblohit to you now. So how would you define the core pillars of zero trust and how can organizations implement them effectively? So if you can just throw your viewpoint.
Nice question. I think this is the first question when I go to the second round of conversation, when the C-level people now give a hand to the individual tower leads to bombard me with the questions. So I think this is very important. I started with a glimpse of it, and Ali, he was touching on that. It's user, that is identification of the user. So we all know IAM, identity and access management, but what's more important is that how you're doing the identity and access management. It is not only for the user who is authenticated, but also the application, also the intermediate parties who are authenticating. So for example, when you talk about authentication from B2B or B2C, there are two different methods of authentication that happens. So on a B2B, for example, since a Microsoft company, I can say we have Microsoft CIM, right, or Microsoft B2B authentication, and which again is like, is there a third-party authenticator validating your certificates? So there are multiple ways of authentication. So whatever is never trust, always verify is not only for user, but also for the session that it is enabling, which means that, for example, gone are the days that a user is getting authenticated to your SharePoint site, but doesn't mean that it will be access to every pages of the SharePoint. And if there's a SharePoint application, every tab or every click will be, just by default authenticated. So every micro session is authenticated. That's number one. Now the next three thing is very important, which is data, device. Two things, sorry, data and devices. So the data is, again, data classification, which was talked about. Every data is not for everyone, we know that, right? So there is data privacy is not a choice anymore, which is you take it in the maturity stage, but define your data, classify the data. It's not about only classifying whether it is confidential, open for internal read, not like that. Which level that data can pass on to. So for example, is a masking required? Is rights to retain or rights to open up the file, it is defined for per user group. In that user group, what are the roles? So you go to the granularity of defining that data privacy. Now, there are multiple layers of data privacy also, that how do you do masking? How do you actually track by e-discovery? You can also do some case management and all. Now, mainly coming to the devices. Now, this is very important. Device security in Zero Trust doesn't always mean that you have an anti-malware or, or antivirus there and scanning it. It's an XDR solution. Endpoint detection and response, because until and unless you're continuously able to understand the attack pattern or the .dll or .exe files which are being opened or exploited in your machine, you won't be able to track that. And the last is obvious, and last two is very important, network. Your network isolation is very important, because there are two things in Zero Trust, which is like data in transit and data in use. Because first thing is that when the data is in transit, obviously, we all know SSL VPN solution and the secure web gateway, which is not getting replaced. It is getting more and more enhanced, because that's where man-in-the-middle attack happens. And second thing is that data in use. It can be in a database, it can be in a Kubernetes or a container, or it can be in a PaaS platform where it's data in the runtime. So importantly, how do you do a micro-segmentation at each layer? So you have different risk tiers of data being isolated from each other. So that's very important. So maybe your pre-production data might be compromised, but that should not harm your production or, for example, your testing environment. They should be completely isolated. And last comes application. DevSecOps, we have all heard about. Now, some people might have confusion. Is DevSecOps part of Zero Trust? Zero Trust is not a product. It's a thought process. If you cannot do a continuous scanning and testing of that with your standards, then how would you actually know whether it is trusted or not? And lastly is that you need to have monitoring. Whether it is a strong XDR platform you start with, and then you migrate to a SIEM, and then you have a SOC process in place, or you have your own in-house mechanism, but you need to have your observability or your monitoring absolutely in place. And last comes remediation. You cannot have manual remediation only. And why I say that is that you need to have your patching cycle immediately done, or you need to have a revocation of a IP address. All those things put into place, you need to have an XDR solution and a monitoring in place, so that when you monitor a threat in any layer of the Zero Trust framework, you can at least revoke or block access And then you investigate and do that. And lastly, governance goes without saying. Governance of how your process is going on. And that's important. So those are the kind of pillars, and that's how your entire zero trust can look like. So this is broken down into foundation and maturity, but it depends on the customer's journey of how they want to take it. But this 5 pillars, and with observability, is a must-have.
Perfect, yeah. You ended with governance, which made me happy. Yeah. Okay, you also mentioned about data in transit and data in use, right? And I'm sure there is another one angle, which is data at rest as well, which
Absolutely.
we don't touch about. But I mean, I know the answer, but I just take your viewpoint on that. So out of these 3, which one is the hardest to implement in terms of cybersecurity techniques? What's your viewpoint on that? I mean, is it? I think data in use, I heard that is the hardest thing to implement the cybersecurity. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. But I'll add on that data in transit is also important, because majorly, as I was talking about, that people still believe that if you are having a perimeter firewall, having an SSL VPN, and if you're having a microtunnel and done, it is still secure. And you just authenticate it in 15 minutes and that's done. It's not that. You can still hack it. You can still hack it. Second thing is that in authentication, people think cloud native authentication for financial related data or IoT related data is absolutely okay. But there are cases which has been seen that you need to control your own key mechanism. That's where integrating your IAM tool with your own HSM, which is hardware key management system on premises. So you need to actually see your use case. How sensitive is your data? How granular you need to make an access. And that's where, so data in rest is absolutely, so data in use is absolutely, but with that goes data in transit, because you will use it not within yourself, you'll be transiting it across B2B and maybe B2C. And that's very important.
Yeah, and we need to talk about sovereignty and all that thing.
Absolutely,
yes. Okay, so Abhilash, if I go back to you again, yeah? So when protecting the most valuable assets, or like say crown jewels, this term crown jewel also I heard in DORA only, okay? So what advice would you give organizations to reduce the risk related to that?
I think first of all, you need to know which all are your crown jewels are, right?
I was doing that. I was telling them, oh, these are your critical data elements, these are your crown jewels, you need to protect it. So yeah, so please go on.
Yeah, so it's just that, and I'll basically go back to an experience, so about 3 or 4 years back, one fine day I get to hear that, there is a ransomware attack in an organization that I know of. And then I asked them, do you know these machines? The machines are somewhere in a desert, somewhere far away in Saudi. And it's a really small branch office, but they have some critical systems running there, not even added to the domain, nothing. So I think, knowing your crown jewels is the most important aspect here. I think that is the most important one. That's the same thing that I was speaking about as well, data governance. Because, we were talking about where is your data really? If you look at it, I have multiple tools from different cloud providers. Yeah, I have a security tool running on AWS, something running on Azure. And, this is basically now everywhere. So how do you basically understand which is your crown jewel here? So I think that is the most important one. Knowing your assets, knowing your digital assets is primary. Once you know it, I think, then you can probably look into zero trust, building some sort of framework there surrounding this, building all the technology solutions. I don't have to talk about the technical side of these things. Deblohit has already explained about it. But let me just talk about certain things that we do not usually talk about. The non-conventional, the unconventional things. So conventionally, you will have this solution and you think that you already have zero trust architecture in place. But can you think of all the solutions are there in place, but you don't have a process? I was talking about the ransomware incident here. Let me just go back to the same incident. You have all the tools in place. You have the CASB, you have ZTNA, all of these things are there. And something happened. How do you tackle it? There is no incident response plan. Specifically for ransomware, I would say you will need one, because there is no other way you are going to know. And just by having the process is also not sufficient. You will have to test it. Without testing all of this, it is just a waste of time, I would say. So that's what zero trust is. We talk about it. Do you have zero trust architecture? Yes, I have everything. So, but do you have a process? Something happens. How are you going to manage it? I think that is another challenge as well. Like with the crown jewels protection, I'm talking about that because without that, it's not of any use. And then comes, of course, the legacy systems. Anywhere we go, do you have zero trust? Yes, I have. Do you have any 10 years old systems? Yes. What kind of architecture? Oh, it's client server. And then where is the data residing? This is how it is. How is the authentication? Oh, it's Windows integrated authentication. You log in, you have access to everything. Then what were you talking about? You just said that everywhere I will verify. I don't trust, I verify. Where is your verification? There is no verification here. So if you really want to look at zero trust, you need to look at your legacy systems. Because, I've seen it, even I myself, when I was doing it, even I didn't even think about it. With experience, I'm talking about this, based on experience. There's no point in saying that I've already done the zero trust architecture, I've covered all the crown jewels, but where is this? Your legacy systems are still sitting there, all with the sensitive data, not protected, there is no authentication, nothing. So yeah, I think you have to, of course, you mentioned micro-segmentation is a great solution there, but may not really be the right one. You may need to look at custom solution, you may need to modernize your application. It's a journey. So I would say zero trust is a journey. It's not going to end in 1 year, 2 years and all, because you will always find these gaps here and there. I think these are all the main ones, that I can think of when looking at all of this. And then comes the final and the biggest one, I'll always talk about it wherever I go. I'll always end with this because, humans, you've got a zero trust, you've got processes, you've got testing. One fine day, one guy comes and clicks on a phishing link, bam. Story ends. So the culture, I think you have to build that culture. Without that, anything that we do, all of this zero trust or no zero trust, it doesn't matter. You have to build that culture, and it is not easy. I would just say that, and no matter how many times I do all these phishing simulations, every year 3 trainings I give, I do targeted training, but still this guy, every single time, send him anything, he'll click on it.
No,
He doesn't have that side of the brain at all. I'm actually frustrated. I'm telling you truly. Because, no matter what you do, give him a link, he's going to click on it. Because, most of the nights he's just on the mobile. He's not looking at the laptop. So you have someone like that.
No, Abhilash is touching on very valid points. Actually, I
am basically sharing my frustration here.
And I can relate to it, to be honest. I am 100%.
Because I know what is happening. Yeah. This guy is basically, most of the time, these buggers will send it in the night. And this guy is mostly drinking. And he is actually on the mobile. Click on it, that's it, and then my phishing tool basically reports me, this guy is clicking. So I gave him specific training last week, and he's clicking on it again. Yeah. So yeah, this is the biggest challenge here. I would just say that, whenever you're looking at any kind of cybersecurity program, even zero trust as well, look at this aspect. This is the most important one. Because all those attacks that you're seeing now will definitely have a human element to it. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, very well explained, Abhilash. Because when we talk about, say, AI and cybersecurity, we generally talk about more on technology and the data and all that thing. But we forget very two important topic about process, which you touch base, and the people side of it. So we need to make sure that we have that culture where, the technology and data has to be used by people using certain processes. So which is very important. Thank you. Yeah. So Gokul, if I go back to you again. So circling back to these practical challenges, right? So what are some common hurdles organizations face when implement zero trust, and how can they overcome them? So if you can tell us.
So starting from your the process aspect, so one of the thing I just wanted to highlight, this is a question open to everyone as well. Now we always say role-based access control, right? RBAC is something which is again a basic pillar of zero trust networking, or any security aspect you take it. Now, I've been thinking and I've been discussing with multiple CISOs that you give an access to a particular person based on his role. So he is a network engineer, so he has got access to the network switches and routers and so on. Have we ever thought this should be changed to a skill-based access control? So because do we know, so there is an interview happening with a particular person before hiring, okay, so where just a matter of 10-15 minutes you speak to him, how much knowledge you will get about him, so what actually he knows. He may be mugged up so many things, and he may be saying, this is how routing works, static routing, IP and whatever, so and so, and okay, he's good, or he is CCI security, so hire him. So, or he's CISSP, so hire him, he's a security expert. So what practical knowledge? So if I give him access, okay, will he break my system or not? How do you know this? So this is something actually people started speaking. This was a concept. This has been in the discussions forums, but nothing came out yet. But hopefully, maybe like the framework makers or the research centers may be coming out with that soon. So this is a concept actually everybody should be, we should go back to our office and look at the people who is working on a particular firewall and think a minute that actually does he know something, or is he just doing a chat GPT and again configuring it. So we are talking about AI, right? So chat GPT, so just do it. You search on this particular subject, you put on ChatGPT and say that I have an event, I need to talk as a panelist. So it will give you all the details. So it's just a 5-minute job. So there's nothing complex about it. Now, what is the question?
No, I was asking you about the challenges, how you can overcome those challenges around zero trust and all, actually. Yeah.
No, so again, the challenges, it have to be driven from the top, I would say. And again, the human interventions or the resistance will always be there, because you started implementing an SSO, for example, or MFA, multi-factor authentication on your website. Suddenly, you need to send an OTP or email OTP or SMS OTP, etc. So the people will react. See, they said, it was working all these years, there was no attack. Why are you implementing this? That is the first question every organization, every user will ask. But this is actually a phase-wise approach if we adopt it. So it have to happen. So if we take as a policy, as a process, if we take a decision, organization-wide, it have to happen. So that is why since I work with DHA as a regulator to the hospitals in Dubai, so we actually regulate these things. So the MFA is one of the things which we are implementing it right now. Whatever the public-facing systems are there, the MFA is going to be implemented in another couple of weeks' time. So this is already a part. Even if there may be resistance, but that is how it is. So the rule is rule even for a fool, so people say, right? So, so that's what we
Yeah. So because Gokul started talking about regulations and all, right? So I come to Ali about the regulatory compliance side of it, yeah? So how does zero trust align with the regulations, first of all? And how can organizations ensure compliance across areas like identity and data protection? So if you can tell us.
Yeah, this is good. But actually, any regulated framework, whether it's forced from governmental entities like, for example, Central Bank of UAE, or even compliance like ISO 27K or PCI DSS or GDPR, all of these are sharing the same target, which is protecting the data against any kind of data breach, right? So zero trust security has a very big intersection point between the main objective of the compliance and regulations and mitigating any data breach. So we talked about how the internal member of any organization accessing sensitive information, right? This is one form of zero trust. Other form, which is called API to API or system to system authentication as well, right? So if we have two components of applications needs to communicate together, and these are exposing some kind of data together, right? So the organizations to apply zero trust in this regard should apply something like maybe certificate, SSL certificate to exchange together, or a kind of cryptography implementation like mutual TLS and all of this advanced stuff. So in general, zero trust security has a great portion of any regulated framework, which is the main goal, because if you go with the security controls of zero trust security, you will find it the same exactly strong requirements from these frameworks, like micro-segmenting the network, having very detailed observability for everything happening in your technical resources, having least privileges, applying another security layer, which is multi-factor authentication, and all of these. So without applying zero trust, Zero trust is not a technology as we say now, it is just a strategy. So by applying this zero trust security, you assure that you are aligned with all of these regulated frameworks and you are not making any luxury stuff. It's a must actually right now.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So I'll go to Deblohit now to you. So I'm thinking about our previous talk about the AI and ethics and all that thing, right? So if I talk about the angle of Gen AI implementation in organizations, right? How can they implement certain security principles which will align with the zero trust framework in relation with Gen AI specifically, if you can help us?
I think this is very relevant in recent times, and I was actually speaking on some points when Cynthia was talking about her portfolio and how she is doing that. So this is a major concern made by all the people who are working on the AI, and I'll be happy to also hear questions if you have follow-up after my answer. So majorly, the basic principles doesn't change, even if it is a AI or if it's a machine learning. The baseline is deep learning, and it has been built on machine learning and the scripts of Python and Javas and everything. I'm not going there. But importantly, the aspect is that even before thinking about zero trust for Gen AI products, it's about how do I ensure that my Gen AI tool or the process is secure, and then I look at the entire zero trust portfolio. So importantly, hallucination and bias are the two important components which we need to address when we talk about zero trust in an AI world. So obviously the baseline things like user, data, devices, network, everything is part of the Gen AI because you're ultimately communicating. There's a chatbot, there's an interaction, there's a co-pilot. So when you talk about AI today, it's majorly working as a co-pilot with you, right? It's co-piloting with you, and that's the focus of every company in whatever the form. So in Microsoft, since we are part of the Microsoft company, Avanade, we talk about co-pilot, but there might be other terminology by the other companies. So how do you secure your prompts and the data is important. So the data set which is actually coming, again, it goes back to the very primary thing, that is data privacy and data security. Now, these are the two very different things, data privacy and data security. So data privacy means, again, coming to how you are utilizing the data, what is the source, what are the classification, and has it been authenticated about its legitimate. Second thing is data security, when it is actually residing in your containers or in your pool. So for example, when you're prompting anything in AI is like it starts with a prompt, a simple English, which goes back to an LLM, which then translates that into a more machine understandable way, right? It's like English to a LLM process. Now the LLM now, when it actually connects with different sources, so for example, if there is an LLM in security, let's say, which is trying to understand that what are the top 5 threats in my organization right now, it will be actually interacting with your EDR tool. It will be, might be interacting with your cyber threat intels. It will be interacting with your antivirus, patch management, so on and so forth, right? So think about in the same way when you're asking about financial data, blah, 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 anything. It's all playing with data. So data security and data privacy are the two important pillars, which is focus point for zero trust. And if you have seen NIST, the NIS2, which is being released, specifically around the AI security, and if you can read it, it has focused on data privacy immensely. And importantly is who is using that prompt, because in AI, one important thing is that you can actually create damage, you can hallucinate that model, or you can even put a malicious code in that chain of AI when you do a different kind of prompt engineering. There were recent attacks, OpenAI tool, which was used by Uber and which was used by other companies also. It happened recently, where there was a hacker who was very novice, but what he did, he or she, don't know the hacker, but what the hacker did was for continuously 3 days, tried to hallucinate a legitimate OpenAI tool and implanted a malicious code, because it thinks like a human. It's like prompt engineering. It's English and it starts to learn. So, this hallucination and biasness is again an important aspect, and that's where your data privacy and data security is immensely important. And having the core pillars of who is using the authentication, the devices, the network it is passing through, it is the foundation based on which you can then put your GenAI things and everything. So yeah, data privacy and data security.
Perfect, yeah, and I completely agree. These two concepts around data privacy and security are important, and they are quite different in a way. How do you implement them? But there is a correlation as well, because when I see from a data perspective, right? So if you talk about data privacy, right? So your PII data, your personal identifiable information, right? So when you know that this is my PII data, you want to implement more data security around those elements, right? So that's the way it may become more important to find out which data needs to be protected in terms of crown jewels and all. So the privacy and security are going hand in hand in terms of building up your zero trust frameworks. I think, yeah, very valid point. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Abhilash, if I go back to you now, so coming back to the technology side of it, so what are some tools and technology that modern SOCs should use to implement this zero trust alongside AI?
Yeah, okay, AI. So I think when it comes to AI, I think everything is AI now. What is not AI, right? Any tool, look at it, you will put an AI in the middle of it. And I was just looking at the GITEX stuff. Any poster you look at it, there is an AI in it. And I was just, today I was driving and I was showing my wife, look at it, the refrigerator, AI is written in the middle, because, you write AI, it's going to become AI. AI, the AI that we are talking about has always been there. It is just that, it is being used in a different way now. Probably we are also confused with the LLM. Anyway, that's a different subject. So what I am trying to talk about is that, you're talking about solutions here. AI-based solution, I think when it comes to zero trust, the first and foremost solution that you will look at is SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, which basically covers multiple tools. And when a lot of people hear about zero trust, they think that, okay, this is like, okay, we bring zero trust, we install it, done. That's not how it is. It's just a suite of application that you have. The concept is simple. Like we said, we look at everything, we authenticate everything, we do not trust anyone, we keep on verifying it. Now here comes my another point that Gokul was first trying to say that zero trust has always been there and new. But I think the thought of always looking at it and then always verifying it, always not trusting it, the concept has basically taken us to different tools and solutions that we can use. The most interesting one that I've seen, all that I'm speaking about is from my experience. The one that I've seen is biometric based continuous authentication. So just, I don't want to tell you which company it is, but a friend was saying that, he works for a bank. So the bank basically receives an email from someone saying, please change my bank account number. Just about 2 or 3 hours back, he had sent an email saying, okay, send me money on this account. And then after 3 hours, he says that, send me money on another account. So we're just trying to find out what's going on. So their security team was investigating the incident. They just realized that, the actual guy was sent the first email and he was logged in. Another guy came in from his own house. That guy sent another email saying, okay, please transfer it to another account. Basically coming from the same device, same IP. How do you basically find this? So this is where I'm talking about zero trust going in a different direction. I would talk about biometric based continuous authentication. You would have probably heard of it. I've just seen a video on YouTube saying that, on iPhones, I don't want to talk about specific products, but I think it's interesting. It is taking your photos all the time, it seems. Go search for it on YouTube. Even in the night, if you have an iPhone, it's taking a photo of you. I think we are actually going towards that direction, trying to check, is this Abhilash? Is this the same guy? This is continuous authentication. Not only biometric, the idea is to even look at your keystrokes. How exactly are you typing in? How exactly are you using your mouse movements? This is where we are heading to. Isn't that beautiful? I think that is how zero trust is going to be implemented eventually. Why did we get here? Because we started thinking about do not trust, always verify. This is the best way to verify, I would say. Just for now, yes. Until you find another issue, another hacker comes in, he does something, then we'll have to think about something else. But as of now, looking at it, looks like a really nice solution because, it's continuous. Always checking from your keystrokes or from your mouse movement and also your face, all of this together ensures that, okay, this is the right guy. It's not another guy who's sending an email here, or it's not another guy who's trying to access my application here. So I think that look like a really nice solution. And then, another solution that I came across, these are all AI based, by the way. You asked about AI, so that's why I'm talking about AI. Another solution that was of interest to me is that most of the hacks, if you look at it, like we said, either phishing emails, like I said, about my other colleague, but there are other incidents. Most of the times what is happening is insider threats. It's usually an insider. He has done something. Could be a contractor as well. Anything is possible. What do you do about them? You have those honeypots. I don't know if all of you may be aware of a honeypot. From a cybersecurity perspective, you basically create a port, like a technical port, making the hackers, please come here and do something. So we basically see what the hackers are doing. It's like a trap that we set up for them. Some of you do not know what it is. So another solution that I've seen is internal honeypots. Basically speaking, AI is going to learn about your behavior. Abhilash, he sees a sensitive file, he's going to open it. He saw HR there, compensation, he's going to open it. So behavior is being analyzed and learned, and then honeypots are planted inside our network to lure insiders. So you try and understand what is the demography, what kind of people do we have, how are all our IT guys, and then that is going to help you on a longer run. Because that's why I said that in a lot of risks are surrounding insider threat as well. So that is why this kind of a solution is required. And I would also talk about another solution which you would have already heard of, probably you already have it. I am in the process of deploying it, mostly about the dark web monitoring and basically attaching it to their threat intel. Because we are looking at internal, you're looking at our external surface, but are we really looking at the external surface? What do we see outside? Am I being talked about in Abhilash, Radhadevi, head of cybersecurity, okay, trading? You see it on the dark web, then you basically get it here. You understand that you're being talked about, or the company is being talked about, or the passwords or some data from this company has gone out. So this intel can also help. I think this is a very common solution these days. A lot of companies are using, but I just wanted to mention it because I think it's of prime importance now. I think these are the basic things. That like I was not at all talking about anything that is conventional. Things where we are heading to. I also realized that, like I was talking about the continuous authentication, a lot of devices, from mobile devices and other kind of laptops and things, I think they're all looking at these technologies as of now, and you can see them in action real soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, and you started with the definition of AI actually, which is a very valid point, because with this commoditization of general usage of AI, I think the regulators are also now focusing very much on the definition of AI, because not everything which can be automated is AI, because people are selling AI-enabled toothbrushes, AI-enabled pillows, and all that thing. So I think the organization needs to clearly define what's the boundary of AI and also, which is a very valid point. And thank you for sharing all the technology-related things around AI. Yeah. So if I go to you, Deblohit, from a people, process, and technology perspective, right? So what potential obstacles do organizations face in these areas? And how can managed service providers like Cognizant help over them?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to say any managed service provider. I mean, I think that's the basic strategy of whoever is leading that department and everything. So see, I'll touch base zero trust from an angle of AI plus the conventional services that we have. It's important to actually reduce your attack surface reduction, right? And the way that you can actually look at how from people, process, and technology perspective is that first you need to first monitor and understand the analytics has to be there to understand that what's going on as in a people and the process perspective. So for example, if you do not know that what authentication is failing in your legacy system and how it is interacting with from legacy to the on-premise, so because most of the organization, or maybe many of the organization, will have a database presence on-premises which talks to the front-end system in cloud, okay? Or maybe our authentication system still lying on-premises, talking to some application on the cloud. Vis-a-vis, there is some IoT, but now I'm talking about the IoT. In the IoT world, you cannot have everything on cloud. You will still have machine level authentication on premises, and that need to translate and then talk to the system in the cloud, because there's a marriage between two of the systems. Now, thinking about all this perspective, is it really possible to have 5 or 6 different tools to monitor it at its individual level, like IoT monitoring, then you are having identity monitoring, network monitoring, and then a security and compliance monitoring, and then report it back? It's not possible. What I'm talking about is a SOC process, or a monitoring process, or an analytics and orchestration process. User Entity Behavior Analytics, UEBA. Maybe you have heard about it. Okay? So what is that? User entity is not only like a user who is logging into a system, a user who is operating your IoT platform, a user who is interacting, who is managing a devices, anything a user is doing, touching your system of application. That is a primary thing that you start monitoring with. Second is what you touched, is that cyber threat intel, the honeypots, because there are certain things which has happened. A classic example, information of compromise, like for example, a customer, again a phishing attempt, was gone undetected by a customer. They had all the tools in place. The email was legitimate. It was coming from every right characters within the organization. It didn't have any email link, but it did have only an image embedded in that email. Okay, what the employee had to do is just click and open that email, no attachment and everything. But when you open an email, it actually downloads the .png extensions and everything, and you can still embed it. It went undetected because it was flagged as valid, right? But if you do not have a continuous monitoring system, at least exploiting or bursting some uncanny or some kind of extension which looks legitimate but it's not there, but continuously monitoring it, you won't be able to understand the process you need to fix, what people is doing, or what training that you need to bring in, like the targeted attacks or phishing campaigns. It has to be also matured, right? You cannot have the same old way of it. And then on the technology, it's not about always to buy a new technology, but it's about fine-tuning your existing technology, and that's very important. So I think more from an AI perspective, attack surface reduction, start with your SOC or process, like your SIM, your cyber threat intel with knowing your information of compromise, what's happening in the dark web, what's happening with your IP address ranges, what's happening with your service provider, because you are taking your internet or your MPLS or whatever the L2 connectivity from a service provider, and they provide you the IP address based on which you have your services, right? Whether you're on cloud or whatever. What's happening with those IP address range? You have a CDN provider. What's happening with them? Are they under attack? Do you have a pipeline to mitigate? So overall, your monitoring process starts small. Have your monitoring process solid. SIM, your XDR or the EDR, whatever you want to say. And third is your cyber threat intel. These are the core components. And how do you test whether those are relevant? You need to have a purple team. People, you have heard about red team, blue team, right? Gone are those days. You need to have a purple team, which comprises of attacker and a responder to see what's the tolerance of your organization. A threat hunter who will update your run books to understand what detection rules needs to be custom built for you. Everything is not OOTB. You need to have a custom rule for your organization to do those detection. And and then the thing is that based on your maturity as a foundation, when the foundation is done, you need to have an incident response team, because there will be some scenarios like a phishing, legitimate phishing, you have clicked or something has happened and some credential will get leaked. Now, how do you have that team in place which will come and block the traffic and do a RC analysis later and save you from ransomware? You need to have some guardrail in place. But on a foundation, have your SIM, your EDR, the threat intel in place. Once that is done, have the process and the people all aligned. Have your incident response as the second maturity stage. So you go step by step and reduce your attack surface. So these are my recommendation to most of the organizations.
Perfect and well said. I may touch base with you to know more about purple team. This is the term I heard first time, to be honest. Yeah. Okay. So Ali, going back to you now. So how can we better identify risk-sensitive data usage and utilize these signals to harden zero trust controls? If you can help us to know that.
Yes, the answer in one word is observability.
Okay.
So first of all, once you implement zero trust is a very big journey in an organization, right? So you do something in the network, you do something in the databases, you do something in everything, you add security layers, right? So I come, when I work with my team, I always say that do not enable or disable or deploy or do anything on anything without knowing how to monitor it, right? Even in software development, there is something called test-driven development, right? Before writing the code, write the test cases, how the code is being, the code flow and so on. The same applies in cybersecurity as well. Do not enable anything without understanding how it can be monitored and how it can be alerted as well. So in each layer of security you add with zero trust security, whether network segmentation, whether identity management, or devices as well, you have to monitor. So for example, the devices are very big risk in any organization actually, because if you apply everything in the zero trust without having production grade observability in place, you may have internal threat actor working in the background, right? And exposing your data in any other place without your understanding what's happening, right? And it will make your effort for the zero trust security effortless, right? So observability is the key. You have to implement something to observe the user behavior, whether once he accesses some kind of technology stack, database, or anything else, and his device as well. Put all of the data generated by this observability platform in maybe a SOC platform. And this SOC can be supporting AI to check if there is any anomaly or any problem running or no, and alert you to have continuous improvement as well. So by this process, you can make sure of that.
Yeah, and very valid point about monitoring and observability, and you touched based on AI actually, right? So anomaly detection and all. One thing which I like now, the most mature organization, what they are trying to do, they are trying to use the bias detection tools, which keep monitoring about the bias once you deploy those AI models. So those monitoring is really important, and it's a very valid point. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah. So I'll go back to Gokul, and this is the last question for the panel. So how does AI significantly enhance zero trust security by improving threat detection, response, and overall security posture?
See, basically, as rightly suggested, the monitoring is very important. So from a SOC perspective, purely from a cybersecurity SOC, or maybe you can take it NOC perspective as well. So the monitoring is required. So we always need an automated response system as well, with the predictive analysis, possibly with the user behavior detection tools. So in user behavior analysis, AI can help a lot, on which will give you the predictive analysis. Okay, how this is happening. Okay, this person is always coming through that door. Suddenly he is coming through the other door. Why? So there is a behavioral change. So that is what the basic level of understanding we should have. So suddenly there is a spike in the email. So there are 25 emails going every hour. Suddenly there is 250 emails going out. Is there a behavioral change? So these are the use cases which AI can help the SIEM or the SOC tools to automate it. Similarly, like SOAR, like the automated and remediation aspect. So if there is an issue found out, if it is a legitimate issue, so the AI tools can help you to block that particular IP address. If there is an attack coming, if there is a DOS attack or DDoS attacks comes in, so the AI tools can directly go into and log into the system and possibly block it. There may be always the false positives, and those aspects will be there. The manual intervention is always required, because AI, I would say, it is always a companion. It's not a replacement to the human knowledge, because this is only based on data. So we have that that sixth sense, what we call it as. Sometimes we need to take a decisions which may be not a traditional method of doing it, but you need to act. So those things actually AI will not say. So suddenly you ask something, they'll say we are not prepared to answer this question. So then you're done. So you type a lot of question, suddenly it will say that I don't know. So these are the kind of, and again, so depends upon the organization to organization. The use cases can be watched. So we cannot pinpoint a particular use case. You talk about any topic, you can actually get the AI's help into that. As rightly said, the fridge and washing machine and all. Yeah. We were using this automation earlier also. Now it is termed as AI. Similarly, so I was also looking, anything you have, they were actually selling the capacitors and resistors and all outside in the GITEX. There also they have mentioned that AI enabled resistors. So, so that's how the world is. Yeah.
No, I went to London Tech Week, I think, last month, okay, and there was there were lots of booths around the company who sell the data-related tools, and everyone started using AI along with data. So it's very common now. Thank you.
So Sanjeev, I'll just add one point, very important. It's like your question was how AI is powering this. So thing is that if you've heard about in the Microsoft world and also in the other, it's Copilot for security, Copilot for data privacy, right? So the thing is that it's like a Copilot. What happens is that, and it's a real fact, because since I lead the cybersecurity practice in EMEA, and I am responsible for doing the testing really with the live customer data and to see the relevancy, then make a managed services out of it, right? It doesn't go either way. You test it, see how it is cost effective, right? So it's a trade-off. Think about a scenario of a SOC analyst, okay? It's a pure play, monitoring, right? You have L1, who is responder, L2, who is an analyzer, and L3, who does the threat hunting and the other platform development, right? Now, in a 24x7 shift, and a SOC is not a 8x5, or during the business hours, it's 24x7 service, right? If you have an AI in place, like a Copilot in place, catch and dispatch, like a L1 responder, who knows how to respond to certain events and incidents, who is not analyzing that can be reduced by really 30%, because you're feeding the respective prompts, you're testing the process, and you're giving them the flow. That's number one. Number two is that if you're looking at a threat incident, so for example, let's say if you're having a malicious code like Mimikatz, or for example, certain other kind of a code which comes in, and you need to analyze it. Think about a L2 engineer. They have to go understand that, find in some OpenAI tool which is not validated, and then come with a response. However, we have really tested that for responding to incidents, okay, which is like a P1, P2 kind of an incident, it has reduced the time from 30 minutes of initial investigation to 5 minutes, because you have the relevant plugins with the Copilot. So idea is that AI, when it is integrated with legitimate source, so for example, when I talk about XDR, when I talk about Defender Suite, when I talk about Sentinel, or let's say Splunk, or for example, when I talk about Chronicle, right? And then when you are having the antivirus or cyber threat intel, right, or your CDN service, when they are integrated with the relevant source, and you have a proper prompt which makes sense, then it acts as a companion, reducing your time of investigation from 30 minutes to really 5 or 10 minutes. And that gives you fast response time. And second is that you're reducing your manpower in the managed services, where you had to staff for 24/7 shift, like at 10 people on a managed service, you might need to staff only 4 or 5 people. And then the other rest 5 people, and that's an aspect which was asked by one of our customers in Europe, because they were in-house people of 40 members, and they were saying that means, am I losing the job? The thing is that those people had to outsource their threat hunting, they had to outsource the L3 to other places. Now these people who were, I would say, wasting their time to do the manual task, they are now upskilled to do more mature threat hunting task. So it's a perspective of thinking whether I'm losing job or I'm upskilling them for more other things which I was outsourcing to another company. So Copilot is a companion when it is integrated with legitimate sources. So I would add that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, the technology is always related to whether I'm going to lose the job, but it's always for the betterment. So be it AI, be it cybersecurity, be it the internet or anything, right? So I think well done. Thank you very much for all your valid inputs, and I'm definitely become a little bit more knowledgeable after this moderation. Thank you so much.
So can we have a big round of applause for everyone? All right, so it has been a very informative session.
So I would invite all the panelists for a group photograph. Come on guys, huge round of applause for all the panelists.
Can we have a big round of applause? Yeah.
So first we have Abhilash, Radhadevi. Next we have Ali Ragab. Come on guys, huge round of applause for Ali. Next we have Deblohit Bose. Gokul Vasudev. Come on guys, huge round of applause for Gokul.
And thanks to Sanjeev for, making it at the last time. So a big round of applause for all the key speakers for the session.